Welcome back, MTG Joe here. Today we're going to be doing a weekly meta breakdown for the Explorer Best of 3 format. I know folks have been asking, Explorer Best of 1, what's new, what's the best decks? There's not really any data suggesting anything new. The decks are basically the same. The new set has had little to no impact on the Explorer Best of 1. So if you have your Greasefang decks, if you have your Angels decks, stuff like that, there's largely not much that's been innovated. I can't really get anything other than Greasefang, random reanimate or random piles of just cards that existed, the humans deck, stuff like that. So we'll highlight best of 3 today. I'm also going to be looking so a combination of both untapped GG metadata from folks that have played with the companion tool. So you can use the companion tool yourself. Link is in the video description. Tracks your win rates, aggregates this into stats. So we're looking at some of that, as well as Pioneer challenges from MTGO, seeing if there's any kind of new decks that have come out or just very popular decks that we can kind of port over the Pioneer version of the deck list. Most of them are pretty close, if anything, to card for card what we could play in Arena on Explorer. So let's get started. We are looking Platinum to Mythic rank, so I can get enough games, April 30th to the 7th. We do have to put a 100 game cap to get really anything meaningful in terms of stats. Obviously, the more games played, the better it is, but at this point, there's just not a huge amount of data for the Explorer format. So the top deck, at least from the Arena side, is Izzet Creativity. And we've seen these creativity lists bounce around with what cards they've been playing in terms of the creativity payoff. There's the Locust God combo where you can get Locust God and Sage Falls and basically draw it through your entire deck and make that many hasty tokens. We've seen the versions that just go into Atraxa. And then we've seen a return to the Gearhulk version. And this is probably the version I personally have played the most out of any deck. But basically the core of the deck is you want to use Indomitable Creativity to target a token, whether it be an artifact, a treasure, something of that nature, or like a creature token. There are no other creatures in the deck other than Torrential Gearhulk, so you get to flash back an instant from your graveyard without paying its mana cost. And the big kind of payoff in the deck is Magma Opus, where you can cast it for free. Draws you cards, kills things, taps things down, a whole bunch of utility. This version is probably the cleanest in terms of being able to just hard cast your threats, with the Torrential Gearhulk just being very easy to kind of cast on curve, especially with treasure makers in the form of Fable the Mirror Breaker as well as Prismari Command. I will say this deck has the hardest matchup for this deck, having played a lot of various Gearhulk Magma Opus piles, is the Angels deck. Your removal doesn't really line up to the 4 toughness. The bounce that you have isn't great because they just recast and gain life, and they can often kind of outpace you. You could win it, but you have to play like really tight and just hope that they don't get Valkyrie, Resplendent Angels. The deck's got Burn, Fiery Impulse, Volcanic Spite, Prismari Command, ways to make treasure tokens and loot, and then Divide by Zero is kind of tempo bounce with a Learn package. So Learn hasn't really been seen much outside of Standard at the time. The Learn package, Mascot Exhibition, Teachings of the Archaics, as well as Environmental Sciences. So notably, this is also could just be used for looting, so you can kind of draw discard as well. And this can also target your own stuff, so you can return your Gearhulk as well. So it enters the battlefield, you can cast the spell, and then if you have enough mana, you can rebuy your Gearhulk as well. Your sideboards, you got Rending Volleys for blue and white things on Counterball, red-green hate, counter spells for big mana stuff. Fry basically can hit Teferi and like 5 toughness. And then in the control matchups where you need to shift off the creativity plan, you take out the 4 creativities, you bring in Behold, and then the Shark Typhoons as well. From there, we move to Mono Green Devotion. This is an interesting take on the Devotion strategy. A lot of the Pioneer lists are just moving into 3 Oath of Nisas and the 2 mana Rare Invasion, like the battle that lets you basically mirror, dig and find a card just because it's not legendary. This version's a little bit more creature focused. We see the inclusion of Tribute of the World Tree to draw you cards and put counters, paired with the addition of Pelucranos. So World Tree lets any of your late game elves become 3/3s, and then any of your subsequent creatures also draw you cards, kind of mirroring that Kiora ability. Pelucranos is another large 4-power body for 3 mana, but this also, the big thing with this deck is you're kind of susceptible to aggressive decks, this can be flipped fairly easy in this deck because you, gain a lot of mana. So you can then get a 6/6 lifelinker. Then you have some Kioras in there, your normal ramp package. You're basically trying to abuse Nykthos in this deck to generate a whole bunch of mana. There's a Gem Razor in here to blow up artifacts or enchantments. And then there's a Silverback Elder, which is a card that hasn't seen much play. Just kind of really rewarding you for casting creatures afterwards. They gain you life, they find you more lands, or they blow up artifact enchantment. And then you also have a Vorinclex in there. Another creature that can find you lands, and then it flips, kind of mills, reanimates creatures, puts counters on things, and lets you fight. Kind of all mixed into there. Sideboard, this is a strict Karn board, so artifact for every situation. Graveyard hate, artifact enchantment hate, activated ability hate, multiple spells per turn, or kind of, if you could get ahead, you can do in the mirror. You could fetch for it and then turn off their spells, or just this deck that's looking to play a lot of spells in a turn. Combo hate, this lets you go pseudo infinite with 16 mana and a lot of clicks, but it also could just be fair, kind of value-wise to buy stuff back from your graveyard. This can be used as removal. Esco's Chariot and Sky Sovereigns, more kind of grindy cards. Chariot gives you some bodies and lets you kind of attack in. Sky Sovereign can be used as removal. Mortal Sun for Planeswalkers. God Pharaoh's Gift is a new one in here. Lets you reanimate stuff. Cityscape Levelers, card that's being seen in some numbers in the main board. It's a very good answer to Atraxa since it's a cast trigger. And then it can just keep repeatedly destroying the Atraxas. Portal to Phyrexia, Sack and Reanimation. Great Henge to gain you life and card advantage. And a Dark Steel Citadel to be fetched. You're missing a line drop. From there, we go to 5-color, but really Rakdos Creativity, 54% win rate. Another creativity deck, but this one's also got Transmogrify. The payoff in this deck is going to Atraxa Grand Unifier. This deck can also be served as a Reanimator deck. With looting effects or just the Liliana the Veil. Then you cast Liliana's Death Majesty with the -3. You can return target creature. You have Rotting Reunion for Graveyard Hate. Make tokens that can be exiled and then use it. Your Ob Nixilis, same idea. You can kind of splinter twin your opponent loosely. Ob Nixilis, Casualty, an Atraxa lets you ultimate it right away to deal 7 damage, so you can attack with Atraxa, then casualty it, and then deal your opponent another 7, which is pretty cool. Life to Shiro, early removal, life gain, and then flips for a target that can be transmogrified away. The sideboard also, there's Mutavaults in the sideboard that can also be targeted. Sideboard, hand hate, blue-white hate, just removal, hand hate and graveyard exile. Grindy matchups, you have Liliana and Ob Nixilis, so if you're playing against like control and stuff, you can usually just win with Planeswalkers. Atraxa is not always going to be a consistent hit, but it's similar if they have a lot of removal, that's something to be mindful of. And then burn on the house as a sweeper or just tokens as well. Moving over to Pioneer, I'm going to highlight a couple decks. So this is from a Pioneer challenge. It's a green-white kind of Hateberry human mid-range deck. So it's similar to like your Kylo's Reconstruction Collected Company deck. You have your 8 elves, an Ooze, Lovestruck Beast. So this is kind of like the green-white company decks that we saw of past. Archon of Emeria to slow down your opponent's casting more than one card a turn, as well as non-basics come into play tapped. Skyclave Apparition, that's really nice art. As removal, Werewolf Path Leader as card advantage, Brutal Cathar as removal, so 8 pieces of exile. Augur of Autumn to play lands off the top of your library, and if you have Coven, you can also cast creature spells, so pseudo card advantage. And then Phyrexian Censor being another kind of tax style effect. So interesting there. The only cards we don't have is Voice of Resurgence. You can play like Thalia in the side. Similar idea. You want to tax your opponent's non-creature spells. You can also play more Elite Spellbinders. Voice is like a unique card. It'd be nice to have this on Arena, but it gives you another kind of option there. See Lorna, the third path in the sideboard. So Green-White Company, if you like those kind of mid-range creature hate bear type decks. Then we also have a 5-color Enigmatic Incarnation deck. So this is using Enigmatic. You sacrifice enchantments to kind of tutor up a whole bunch of different creatures. And then you have kind of value play. So you have Fire Invention to hard cast, Touch of Spirit Realm, Mirror Breaker, all ways to kind of make it. We've seen these versions in the past play like cheaper. Omen of the Seas, stuff like that. But these ones you have like Leyline Binding, for example. It could be cast for 1 mana, but then sacrificed for a 7 mana threat. So the 7 mana threats, you could get stuff like Atraxa Grand Unifier, Agent of Treachery, or Titan of Industry. Your hits are like Clever Impersonator to copy something. I don't think we have Clever Impersonator, so you can play Body Double or like just any of the clone style effects. We have Tolsmere, Friend of Wolves as a fight spell, Cavalier Dawn to blow up stuff, Bone Crusher Giants as removal, Elish Norn to shut off ETB effects, Kenrith, and then Heliod, Radiant Dawn. This is something I've been playing. It was one of in my green-white standard enchantments deck, but this lets you rebuy your enchantments that you sack, and then when it flips, you can cast stuff at instant speed. Sideboard, oh, this is actually a Karuga deck. Karuga Fires. Sweetheart. Sweetheart. I love these types of companion arts. So similar case, your Arcana Myriad for tax, Leyline of the Void for graveyard hate, Deafening Clarion as a sweeper, and Mystical Dispute for counter spells. And then lastly, no surprise, Rakdos Midrange is a very powerful deck. It's taking all over all the Pro Tour decks, but just kind of highlighting this. This is one of the best decks of the format. If you want to play Rakdos, this is one of the lists you want to be looking at. So very similar. Their Bank Buster is a card that they're starting to integrate into the decks itself, just providing you card advantage. Bone Crusher Giants, Croxas with the sweet art. Graveyard Trespasser for graveyard hate. Blood Tithe, Shieldred's in there. Fable. Power Word kills the option in terms of the 2 mana removal. 1 Lily. You got your Thoughtseize in there to mix in. Interesting to see like Haunted Rage over Blackleaf. I guess because most of the time you're going late game. So preferring something like that. The only card we don't have in Arena is Urborg. So this one's actually interestingly playing 3 Castle Lockwing. I would probably trim these numbers because Urborg helps fix some of that. But you do have 8 swamps, so it could be decent. But an interesting kind of version there. Just curious. Are they all on that? No, some play like Den. I think this mana base is probably better. I'm going to copy this list. It's pretty much the same deck. Duress over Liliana Maid, but this mana base seems a little bit more stable. I just don't see how you're going to... 3 castles is very ambitious, I would say, in the mana base. It probably helps you in like the mirror, but against like aggro and stuff like that, you really want to go 1-2-3 with this deck to like eat away at their hands and stuff. Turn 1 Thoughtseize is very powerful. Alright, so I'm going to wrap this up. If you are playing anything cool in Best of 1 Explorer, let me know. If you have any cool lists, we'll share with the community. If not, we'll catch you next time. Thanks for watching.